wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk.
It's Tuesday, Sooner Nation, and we have got a mega episode here with a lot to unpack. Basketball, football, basketball. We're going to talk about a lot of it. College football playoff rankings, SEC power rankings, Oklahoma getting dismantled because they can't play defense on the hard court, and the Thunder just demolishing teams in the first quarter. So we're going to go everywhere here in this episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. I know a lot of people tune in because it's football season and it is that crucial time of the year. We're going to start and end with football. So if you want the football content only, start here, skip the middle, go to the end, and you're going to get it. But we have to talk basketball. We spent the Sunday podcast just talking football and deservedly so after the win in Tuscaloosa. But we have to get into some basketball talk. Let's start with the SEC power rankings. We're looking into week 13, and the conference is taking shape. And I've got to be honest with you, I absolutely love where Oklahoma is. I was wrong about this conference, though. And mostly because I was wrong about the Sooners. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start at the bottom, like we typically do. We're gonna work our way up to number one, and things are messy. Things are messy down at the bottom. But let's start with obviously number 16, Arkansas. They're still there. It's the same story. It's the same movie. It's the same frustrating ending. You know, for the Razorbacks, it's close but not close enough. They fall by 1 point to LSU. And it just feels like the fourth or the fifth time this year where they've had a chance late and they couldn't finish. Effort, it's elite. It really is. Their fight, it is there. It's elite. Execution in the final 3 minutes, though, it's not elite. It's not. And that's why that's why they are at the bottom of the SEC. And until that changes, they're going to stay in the basement, and they're running out of opportunity to change that. Speaking of teams who could have changed their narrative, we've got South Carolina at number 15. Yeah, they put a scare into Texas A&M, 2-point conversion away from absolute chaos in this conference. But again, almost doesn't move you up in the SEC power rankings. The Gamecocks, yeah, they're competitive, but the resume, it's thin. It's so thin, and the consistency is just not there. And at some point, moral victories dry up. So South Carolina, number 15 for me again this week. Number 14, I got the Florida Gators. The truth be told, they're lucky they're not lower. It's just South Carolina and Arkansas are just that bad. But the Gators, give them some credit. They hung with Ole Miss for a while, but they're still clearly outmatched. They don't have the depth. They don't have consistency amongst their front seven. And they don't have explosive playmakers to rise out of the bottom tier of this conference. They're not dysfunctional, but they're also not dangerous. Auburn, number 13, they were idle last week. That, no movement for being idle. Nothing changes, good or bad. But this is a team that has been inconsistent all year, struggling to find rhythm on offense, trying to find their identity on defense. I don't know that a bye week is going to fix that, because the last time we saw them on the field, the defense just kind of gave you that appearance as if they're tired of carrying the team. Number 12, Mississippi State Bulldogs. Again, they just got handled. This time it was Missouri. They were outplayed in every phase of the game. Talking about defense just giving up. The defense couldn't get Mississippi State off the field, and the offense couldn't keep the defense off the field either. They couldn't. The Bulldogs couldn't respond offensively. This whole performance felt like a team that's still trying to figure out who it wants to be. And when you're in week 12 of the college football season, that's absolutely not where you want to be. Bad weekend last week for Jeff Lebby and the Bulldogs. Nearing the top 10, first team out of the top 10, I've got LSU. They escaped Arkansas by 1 point, and I really mean they escaped. This team, they play down to opponents. And not like in a way where you're like, they'll figure it out. No, it's become their identity. They're not as explosive as we thought they were going to be on the offensive side of the ball. They aren't consistent on defense. And right now they're a lower tier SEC team. I'm not moving them. I'm pretty sure I had them at number 11 last week. No rise and no fall. This is a team that's got 2 weeks left to figure it out. And again, just going to say it, as an Oklahoma fan, I'm scared. I'm scared of them figuring it out in the final week of the college football season. The other version of the Tigers that Oklahoma plays, starting the top 10, I've got Missouri at number 10. I'm moving them in there, and I think it's for a good reason. 49-27 domination of Mississippi State. It shows that they're trending up. They played disciplined. They looked sharp. They were balanced. They were everything that Mississippi State was not. And now this is not a team that is elite, so don't get me wrong. It's not an elite team, but they are reliable, and that gets you into the top 10 of the power rankings this week in the SEC. Number 9, I've still got Kentucky here. They made the big move last week. I know I took a little bit of heat from it, but I'm keeping them there until they give me a reason not to. Beating Tennessee Tech, it's not going to send shockwaves through anybody in the world of college football. But you know what? You handle the games you're supposed to handle, and that's exactly what they did. Yes, they beat a lesser opponent, and they did so comfortably. They didn't mess around, and they confirmed who they are. This is a solid, steady, mid-tier SEC program that's figuring things out late in the season and has a chance to salvage a bowl game this season, which 4 weeks ago we weren't thinking that for the Kentucky Wildcats. Number 8, speaking of teams that beat up on little guys, give me number 8, the Tennessee Volunteers. They did what Tennessee should have done. They blew out New Mexico. So we had them at number 8 last week. We're keeping them at number 8 this week. They don't have that signature SEC win to justify climbing higher, but they also really haven't stumbled to justify following deeper. They're holding steady. 2 weeks left to change their story. Number 7, Vanderbilt Commodores. Vandy remains, to me at least, one of the surprises of the season. Now, they were idle last weekend, but their resume stands on its own. They have competed at a high level, they've been consistent, and they've earned the right to sit in the upper middle tier of this conference. Again, no movement here because of the bye week, but I like where they are, and they should be happy about that as well. Here's a team that dropped. I've got Texas dropping down to number 6, and let me just be blunt about this. Georgia exposed the Longhorns. Texas got pushed around at the line of scrimmage. The run game just evaporated. The offense never looked comfortable. Now, they've got talent. They've always got talent. But right now, they're not on the same tier as the league's playoff level teams. Not after that performance. And I know that's going to make Texas fans angry, but look at the record, okay? Just look at your record, sitting at 3 losses. Sorry, right now you're on the outside looking in, not a top 5 program. Another team that drops, the Alabama Crimson Tide, sliding them down to number 5. And yeah, it feels weird to say that Alabama is 5th because this is a team that last month I was telling everybody had it all together, was going to make a run. I had them even at times as the best team in the conference. That's where I was with them. But you lose at home for the first time in 17 games. That is significant. Oklahoma forced turnovers. Oklahoma controlled momentum. Oklahoma dictated tempo. And Alabama never found a way to counterpunch. So I do believe the Tide's still very much in control of their own destiny. I don't think they're out of the college football playoff conversation, but I do think right now they're out of the top 4 conversation in terms of the SEC. New to number 4 this week, I've got the Oklahoma Sooners. And listen, like last week's win, that was a program-defining win for Brent Venables. They walk into Bryant-Denny, they force 3 turnovers, they turn those turnovers into 17 points, and it shuts down Alabama, just completely stonewalled them on their final 4 drives of the game. That's not just a good win, that's an SEC statement win. And here's why. Here's why I got Oklahoma at number 4 and not number 3. It's because they lost to Ole Miss. You know, when you look at the ceiling, I think OU has the highest ceiling out of any team outside the top two. I'm meaning between Oklahoma and Ole Miss, I guess, really. But Oklahoma, they lost to Ole Miss. And Ole Miss has been steady week to week. They've been consistent, and consistent matters late in November. Oklahoma is surging. They are absolutely surging. But Ole Miss, they've earned their spot at number 3. That said, Oklahoma controls its destiny. We're going to talk more about the Sooners at the bottom of this podcast, but they're firmly in the playoff race, and they officially belong in this top tier of teams in the conference. I already said a lot about Ole Miss at number 3. They deserve this spot. The Rebels continue to play disciplined, physical, mistake-free football. Now, they don't always blow teams out, but they rarely beat themselves. A 10-point win over Florida, it's not groundbreaking, but when you saw Texas get flattened and Alabama lose, Ole Miss is going to rise, and they're going to earn their spot here at number 3. This is probably the most complete Ole Miss team that we've seen in years, definitely since Lane Kiffin got to town. They're efficient offensively. They're opportunistic on the defensive side of the ball. They show poise. They're steady. They're consistent. That's why I've got them at number 3. We're keeping Georgia at number 2, but let me tell you something. Georgia is coming. That win over Texas looked like vintage Georgia. You got the smothering defense, you got the balanced offense, and a level of physicality that reminds everyone why this program has 2 national championships in recent memory. Georgia they are very well positioned to overtake Texas A&M. They look like they're on a collision course with the Aggies for a shot in Atlanta, but you got to keep them at number 2 right now, because at number 1, Texas A&M has absolutely earned every bit of where they are. Yep, it was a narrow win over South Carolina, but guess what? Championship teams survive. Championship teams win when the pressure is on. They handle it, and they finish. And Texas A&M checks every box right now. They're balanced offensively. They're physical on defense. They've got veteran maturity. They show big-time poise, either at home or on the road. And I don't know that you can point out very many weak spots with this resume. They're not just the number 1 team in the SEC. They may be legitimately the best team in the country. So there we have it. That's the SEC power rankings heading into week 13. Kind of a wild shakeup at the top. You got chaos going on in the middle. You got a predictability there at the bottom. But here's the truth. This conference is separating, all right? You're seeing the contenders emerge. You're seeing the pretenders fall off. And as we head in here in the final 2-week stretch, it's very, very clear. This conference is got elite teams playing elite football. You could say they're playing chess where everyone else is playing checkers. I don't know. But I really do. I think the SEC is on pace to get 5 teams at minimum in the college football playoff. We'll see how the final 2 weeks of the season shape out. This is the Sooner Nation podcast.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we can calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
Well, let's step off the gridiron for just a little bit and on to the basketball court. Let's talk about Oklahoma specifically in basketball. And let's talk about something that became just painfully clear Saturday evening in Sioux Falls. Look, it's early, okay? And you know this, in college basketball, early season losses, they're not always a problem. Sometimes you shrug them off. Sometimes you chalk them up to youth or chemistry, a bad shooting stretch. And sometimes you can even use them as teaching moments. But then every once in a while, a game reveals something bigger than a missed rotation or a cold stretch. Sometimes it exposes what a team is not. And if you look at this loss to Nebraska, 105-99, that was one of those games. Because look, I mean, the Sooners scored 99 points. They shot over 50% from the floor. They went 19 of 21 from the free throw line. They erased double-digit deficits over and over again. This wasn't a team that quit. This wasn't a team that didn't compete. This was a team that simply could not get stops. And that's the story. Unfortunately, I think that's the story of this program early into the season. I mean, it's not a fluke. It wasn't a Nebraska got hot and OU got unlucky type situation. This, I believe, was a referendum of an ongoing problem with this basketball team this season. It's a pattern that we've seen now twice in the last 4 games. Well, I guess the first 4 games of the season. Gonzaga bullied Oklahoma in the paint. Nebraska torched Oklahoma from the perimeter. You've got 2 losses, 2 different methods of defeat, and some very uncomfortable conclusions here. Right now, it looks like teams can beat Oklahoma whichever way they want to. It's not chemistry. It's not youth. It's not a cold night from shooting. This is an identity issue for the Sooners. Nebraska's final numbers were insane. 58% from the field, 56% from the three-point range, 34 made shots, 15 made three-point shots. And that's not the scary part. The scary part is that very little of what they made was contested. You got a guy, Price Stanford, playing like a first-team All-Big Ten performer, 28 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, and total control of the offense. You got Renick Mass putting up 26 points and knocking down 5 3-point shots on his own. They're not deep, one-footed, out-of-bounds, desperation heaves. They're getting rhythm shots. They're getting looks in sync. They're getting screens. They're getting pick and pops. Dribble handoffs, simple misdirection. And every time Oklahoma was one step behind, sometimes 2. The Sooners died on screens. Closeouts were late or they were soft. You got hands that are down and not up. Broken rotations. Nebraska, they didn't shoot over Oklahoma. They shot around Oklahoma. They shot before Oklahoma reacted. They shot comfortably. And as a fan, as a coach, as a player, all of that should be very concerning. Because, look, if Oklahoma had lost this game because they couldn't score, okay, that's fixable. But that's not how they lost. Nigel Pack was sensational. I mean, another great performance. 27 points, 6 of 7 from deep, high-level poise. I mean, he's everything Oklahoma hoped he would be. Xavier Brown got 20 points, 20 tough points. Tay Davis gave you 17. Darian Reed made big plays. The Sooners shot 52% from the floor. That's a good night. And yet they never regained the lead in the final 10 minutes of this game. Why? Because every time they scored, Nebraska had an answer. And that's the sign of a team that's not defending at a level necessary to win. And even with the defensive issues, Oklahoma still had a chance. But they gave Nebraska 2 things. They gave a red-hot offense, something that it loves to have. They gave them extra possessions. They gave them extra points. Oklahoma turned the ball over 10 times in this game. Nebraska turned those 10 turnovers into 17 points. The Huskers only turned the ball over 5 times. That's the fewest in almost a year for Nebraska. And you're just not winning many games when you lose a turnover battle by 5, when you allow 56% shooting from three-point range, and when you give up 28 free throw attempts. That's a losing math on every level of basketball. And yeah, Oklahoma shot their free throws well, 19 of 21, but they also sent Nebraska to the line 28 times. You cannot give an offense that is scorching you everything at once and then give up freebies from the charity stripe on top of that. So here's the heart of the matter. When you look at this team, you can see effort. You can see energy. The guys aren't out there just going through the motions, but they're not playing connected defensively. When the first line of defense breaks down, the next rotation does not show up to help them. When screens hit, guys get stuck instead of fighting over or switching cleanly. And when the ball's in motion, when the ball's moving, the Sooners react late instead of dictating. And look, go back to what Porter Moser said after the Gonzaga game. He says this: we've got to get better on the glass, better on rotations, better defensively. We've got to play to our length. And he's not wrong. But right now, they're not playing to their length. They're not playing to their system. They're not playing with a defensive identity. And let me be clear with what I'm saying. The Oklahoma's not doomed. They're 2-2 on the season. They've shown offensive upside. They've shown that they can fight. There are real pieces here. But I believe this is a crossroads moment because the early schedule, it's only going to get tougher. Better shooters are coming. Better ball handlers are coming. More physical teams are coming. And the margin for error, it shrinks with every game. Offense will win games. Some games. Maybe a lot of games. But defense will define this season. And if Oklahoma wants to go back to the tournament for the second year in a row, if they want to compete in the SEC, if they want to take the next step that Mosher has been pushing for, and really what Mosher needs them to do, then they've got to get stops. They've got to communicate. They need accountability. They need a defensive soul. And until they find it, losses like Nebraska, games where they scored 99 points, they're going to keep happening. Oklahoma's offensive ceiling is high. Their defensive identity is still missing. The question going forward is not whether they can score enough, because we know that they can, but it's whether they can defend well enough to make the scoring matter. Because nights like what we saw Saturday, nights where you score 99 and you walk away with a diagnosis instead of a win, those are the nights that tell you exactly what needs to change and how fast it needs to happen. We're going to stick with basketball for one more segment because what we're seeing from Oklahoma City is just incredible. So if you want the football contact, we're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. Very last segments, skip forward about 8 to 10 minutes and you'll be there. But let's talk Thunder because, most NBA teams, for most NBA teams, the first quarter, it's just, that's the warm-up, right? That's the stretch out your legs, period. That's the let's see what the other team is doing moment of the game. It's where you establish pace, you establish rhythm. That's what you do in that first quarter. For most teams, but not for the Oklahoma City Thunder. The first quarter for the Thunder has become a weapon. Let me tell you what I mean. What we're watching right now, what we saw Monday against New Orleans, it's not just another fast start from a talented young team. No. This is something deeper. This is something more calculated. This is something that says we're done easing our way into games. We're here to end them early. And the Thunder did just that. They didn't just beat the Pelicans. They detonated on the Pelicans. I mean, right out of the gate, this game felt different. Oklahoma City puts up 49 points. That's a franchise record. They put up 49 points. And they led by 25 points after 12 minutes. And I want you just to think about how rare that is here in the modern NBA. Teams don't usually lose games in the first quarter. They might struggle early. They might fall behind. But competitive tension usually stays alive at least until the early third quarter. But not on Monday. This wasn't just a strong opening. It was the basketball equivalent of pulling the fire alarm before anybody knows there's even smoke in the building. Less than 3 minutes into this game, Oklahoma City's up by 10 points. Before the halfway point of the quarter, they were up by 20. The Pelicans looked like they were still trying to figure out, where's my water bottle on the bench? And the Thunder, man, they're running layup lines. And look, New Orleans has excuses here. Zion was out. They're adapting to a new coach. You got young guys getting thrown into the fire here. But none of that really explains what happened, because this wasn't about New Orleans. This was about Oklahoma City deciding the game before the Pelicans even had a chance to settle in. When Oklahoma City jumps out to that 36-11 lead, it's not just because one guy got hot. It wasn't because they hit a string of lucky threes. It wasn't because, Shea drops 20 in the first, that kind of night. This was the system doing the heavy lifting for this team. By the 6-minute mark, the Pelicans had 6 turnovers. The Thunder had already cashed in 13 points out of those 6 turnovers. At one point, Oklahoma scored on 15 of 17 possessions in this game. That's borderline absurd. That's the kind of efficiency you'd expect to see, really in a pregame shooting drill, not against a professional team. And that's the beauty of what the Thunder have created. You don't have to hope that Shea goes nuclear. You don't have to hope that Chet is feeling aggressive. You don't have to hope that Dort remembers how to shoot. The system generates clean looks. The system forces mistakes. The system accelerates pace and breaks defenses apart. Everyone touches the ball. Everyone gets rhythm. Everyone gets fed. Last year's team was already elite. They had the best clutch numbers in basketball. They could grind out fourth quarters. They wore teams out with youth, with defense, with tempo. But you know what? They weren't a first-round knockout team. This year, they've become front runners in the best way possible. This isn't arrogance. This isn't overconfidence. This is a team that understands its strengths so deeply that it knows the fastest path to winning is through early control. Think about what they're doing. They're leveraging conditioning, passion, defensive activity, elite spacing, better shooting, and a deeper, more cohesive rotation. They're using all of that to bury teams before the opponents even know what hit them. That's how defending champions play. This is how experienced contenders play. This is how you win a lot of games without burning out your stars. Let us talk about Chet for a second. Because while SGA is the heartbeat of this team, Chet has quietly become the metronome, right? He's the player who dictates early rhythm. Last season, he had moments of brilliance, but they seemed to come in waves. He would feel the game out, he would adjust, and then he would attack. This year, dude, he just walks on the court knowing he's going to set the tone. Against New Orleans the other night, he put up 26 points, 9 boards, shot 10 of 14. But the numbers don't tell you how he changed the game, the mathematic, the geometry, whatever. For the moment he touched the ball, the Pelicans had to pick their poison, right? If they double him, then SGA carves them up. If they stay home, then Chet just found angles and finished. If they switch, that's mismatch city for the Thunder. If they dropped, 3 points, Chet Holmgren is making defenses wrong before they even make their decision. And that's why these early runs are becoming so common, because the Thunder, they're not just hot. They are unstoppable. And yeah, let's talk about the reigning MVP, right? I don't even know how to describe how easy this game looks for him right now. 23 points, 8 assists, 3 steals, and then another night where he didn't even play in the fourth quarter. Right? If you didn't check the box score, you might not even think that he had done very much. That's the point. This team is getting so far ahead early that Shea gets to coast. He gets to manage the game like a superstar who knows his team has his back. He doesn't need to take over. He doesn't need to force shots. I mean, his streak right now, 87 straight 20-point games. It's second only to Wilt Chamberlain. And it feels like it's effortless what he's doing. And I think that's the loudest statement you can, make in the regular season. Think about what they're saying. When the MVP doesn't even need to break a sweat, your system, it's terrifying. And let me say this as well, while we're talking about players. Oklahoma City needed this game from Lou Dort as well. He had been hurt. He had been cold. He had been pressing. But Monday night, he gave them 17 points. He went 4 of 6 from deep, including 12 points in that monster first quarter. And here's why that matters. If Dort is even an average shooter, the Thunder are hard to defend. But if he shoots the way he did on Monday, it's borderline unfair how good this team is. Last year, Dort quietly hit almost 39% from three-point range. If that guy is back, even occasionally, Oklahoma's spacing becomes lethal. SGA's drives become unstoppable. Chet's pick and pops become automatic. A confident Lou Dort raises the Thunder's ceiling in ways that they're not always reflected on the stat sheet. And I think I think we got to talk about, Isaiah, I didn't mean to go this far down individual players, but we got to talk about iHeart. This is the ultimate glue guy. If there's one player who embodies winning, it's Hartenstein. 16 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, 4 steals, a block, 70% shooting from the floor. Those are ridiculous numbers for a center who's not even supposed to be a scoring threat. And when you look at this guy, the way he screens, elite. The way he communicates, elite. The way he passes, so underrated. His instincts, off the charts. He's the connector that makes the Thunder's second wave just as deadly as the first. And there's a reason that the Thunder have looked even more cohesive since he entered the starting lineup. He gives them structure. He gives them toughness. And there's an anchor on both ends without really needing touches. Every contender needs a Hartenstein. And the Thunder, man, they've got their perfect guy there, that glue guy. So let me tell you why this game matters, what we saw on Monday night. Look, and again, I mentioned this. The Pelicans, they're wounded, right? They're missing a star. They're adjusting to a new coaching voice. But that's not why this was a blowout. This was a blowout because Oklahoma City refused to let New Orleans breathe. Before the Pelicans could even settle in, the Thunder had already forced 6 turnovers. They had already turned those into 13 points. They had already built a double-digit lead. They had already broken the competitive tension in this game. And that last part, that's huge. When a game loses competitive tension early, the trailing team starts playing desperate basketball. They force shots. They rush possessions. They lose their rhythm. And Oklahoma City's doing that to teams on purpose. That's what veteran championship teams do. It's what they learn. They don't just beat teams. They take away their belief. And this is why the rest of the league should look, even though we're in November, the rest of the league should look at this Oklahoma City team and be nervous. Because Oklahoma City already had the reigning MVP. They already had the best defensive guard duo in basketball. They've got a 7'1" unicorn. They've got the deepest guard rotation in the league. They've got a system built on discipline and unselfishness. They have an elite defensive identity. And now they've added a historic first quarter avalanche to their toolkit. This is the evolution of a team that's already gone through the fire. And they did that last season. And they came out as NBA champs. This is what it looks like when potential turns into identity, when youth matures into confidence, when a contender becomes something more dangerous, a team that you can end early on, right? They're going to come in and they will put you to sleep early, that first round knockout. And if Oklahoma City keeps weaponizing the first quarter like they're doing, the rest of the league, they're going to spend a lot of nights down 20 points wondering how the game slipped away really before it even had a chance to get started. All right, back to football for this final segment, and let's talk about something that we've not been able to say like truthfully in a long time. Oklahoma controls its college football playoff destiny. The Sooners don't have their hopes built in chaos. They don't need a miracle. They don't need to pray for 5 teams ahead of them to lose. Oklahoma controls its destiny. The Sooners are number 8 in the latest college football playoff rankings after beating Alabama 23-21 in Tuscaloosa. And I want to be very clear right from the top here. No team in the country improved its playoff position more than Oklahoma did this weekend. Because what Oklahoma did wasn't just win a road game. It wasn't just beat a brand name team. The Sooners snapped Alabama's 17-game home win streak. They out-toughed them in their own building. They out-executed them, and they took full advantage of this moment. And the playoff committee, they noticed. So here's my opinion. It's shaped by the rankings. It's shaped by what the committee said, indirectly through their decisions. Oklahoma is now being judged like a playoff caliber team. They're not being looked at as a rebuilding team. They're not being looked at as an overachiever. They're not being looked at as a nice story. This is a playoff caliber team. And the committee tells you what they think every Tuesday. And they told us this week a very simple message. Oklahoma belongs in the top tier of college football if they finish the job. And that's the phrase that matters here. Finish the job. Because the reward for beating Alabama is this. Every game from here on out is an elimination game. And Oklahoma, they've got their wins, right? They've got 5 wins over ranked opponents. More than most teams in the top 10. And people are going to scream about their losses, the 2 losses, but look who their 2 losses. Number 6, Ole Miss, number 17, Texas. There's not a bad loss on this schedule for Oklahoma, right? There's no anchor weighing them down on this resume. And then you look at the wins, right? Let's look at the key wins. At number 4, Alabama. At number 20, 20 Tennessee. At number 18, well, a home against number 18, Michigan. And the committee values road wins, and Oklahoma has 2 of the best in the nation. So this ranking, it's not charity, it's not hype, it's not nostalgia. This is an earned ranking for the Sooners. And let's talk about the part that's almost surreal to say out loud. If the playoffs started today, Oklahoma would host Notre Dame in Norman in the first round. Imagine, just to let yourself go for a second. We've earned this, Sooner Nation. Imagine the energy. Imagine the atmosphere. Imagine the national spotlight on Owen Field for the first home playoff game in college football history there at that venue. That's the track that Oklahoma is on. And that's why this ranking is so important, because it gives Oklahoma a clear path. Beat Missouri, beat LSU, finish the season at 10-2. You do that, you're in the playoff, and you're probably hosting. And that was unthinkable back in early October after the Texas loss. That felt very, very unrealistic after the Ole Miss loss. But the win at Alabama changed everything. Now, let's flip the coin for a second, because the committee also made something else very clear. Lose one more game, just one, and the Sooners are going to fall to a 16% chance of making the playoff. You know why? Because the margin for error is at 10-2. When you're at 10-2, you've got a razor thin margin of error. Right? The playoff, it's not about good teams with good seasons. It's about teams that you trust. And right now, for the committee, Oklahoma is on the trust list. But lose to Missouri, lose to LSU, that trust evaporates. Because while Oklahoma's resume is strong, its narrative would become this: a good team, a fun team, but not consistent enough for the playoff. So yeah, Oklahoma, they're in control. But that control comes with pressure, urgency, and expectation. And I think Brent Venables is saying the right things. I loved his response when asked about the rankings. He said, it's a waste of time. My focus is on what is in front of us. I don't even know the metrics. I just know it's been hard. And honestly, he's right. This team doesn't need to chase numbers. It needs to chase wins. Venables knows that rankings talk is emotional, is volatile, it is exhausting, and mostly irrelevant until the final week. And he knows his players can't play with the weight of what if. They need to play with the clarity of what now. And what now is simple. Missouri, LSU, 1-0 this week, 1-0 next week. Then you worry about everything else. And let me say, this Missouri game, it matters more than maybe what Oklahoma fans realize. Missouri is not a walkover game. They just beat Mississippi State by 22 points. They are ranked. They are physical. They are well coached. And Oklahoma's coming off an emotional high. If you're Missouri, this is your Super Bowl. This is your playoff. And this is the exact sort of game where top 10 teams, they can slip. Ask Texas. Ask Alabama. Ask other top 10 teams out there. And what happens if Alabama somehow finds a way to come back and win the SEC? Could Oklahoma get jumped? Because I've seen this on social media. So yeah, that's a storyline. Yeah, that's real. Yeah, that's complicated as well. If Alabama wins the SEC with the win over Georgia, let's say, I don't think it's going to happen, but it could. I could. And then in that situation, the committee could reward them. But again, here's what matters. Oklahoma holds head-to-head. This is a tiebreaker that the committee values deeply. If both teams finish 10-2, Oklahoma stays ahead, period. It's the same thing we have with Texas, right? 10-2, Texas wins. Texas isn't 10-2 anymore. So the only way that there's chaos is if Bama wins out, if Ole Miss wins out, if, let's say Oregon wins big and then Texas finishes strong. Then you've got a lot of moving pieces. But you know what solves all of that? Winning out. Right? The path is clear. It's narrow, but it's clear. Here's where Oklahoma stands. Win out, you're in, you're probably hosting. Lose once, you're most likely out. It's that simple. The Sooners have climbed the mountain. They've earned national respect. They've built the resume. But now the season becomes about focus. It becomes about urgency, execution, and maturity. You don't get rewarded for beating Alabama if you can't follow it up. And this is where the playoff teams separate themselves from good teams. This is where Brent Venables' culture shows its spine. This is where Oklahoma proves whether it's truly back, not just nationally relevant, but nationally feared. So the playoff is right here. It's right there. But Oklahoma has to grow up. They got to grow up fast. They deserve to be number 8. They earned it. They fought for it. They survived for it. But rankings don't win football games. And the playoffs don't reward potential. The next 2 weeks, they will tell us everything. Is Oklahoma just a fun story for 2025? Or is Oklahoma ready, finally, to step back into the national title territory? Beat Missouri, beat LSU, finish the job. Because the door, it's not just open, it's wide open. And you know what? It may never be this wide open again. Thanks for listening. This has been the Sooner Nation Podcast. Glad you're here with us. We'll be back Thursday to kind of talk more about Oklahoma, Missouri, preview that game for you. You can catch us every day, heartland-sports.com. Find us on Facebook, Heartland Sports. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, drop a comment. Thanks for riding with us. Enjoy the rest of your week. Boomer. Boomer.